Welcome to another edition of Dungeons and Social Distancing with Nerdarchy.
Today, let's build the All Mountain DND party.
Welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds. I'm Nerdarchy Steve, and as usual, I'm hanging out with this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted.
Take charge and make sure those D&D videos keep showing up in your YouTube feed by hitting that subscribe button.
And if you don't want to miss a single Nerdarchy video, you might want to hoof it over to that notification bell.
You might notice that we're shooting these videos a little bit different than we normally do. We're not both on set together. We are shooting them virtually as we are observing social distancing, and our state happens to be in lockdown right now. So as soon as we can, we'll be back in the studio shooting videos together. So with that, let's jump into our video. Real quick, I just want to let you know that the pre-orders and the ability to buy the out-of-the-box PDF is now live. You can check that over at the Nerdarchy store, where we put together 55 easy-to-use drop-in counters, plus 5 of them that are guest authors from the industry, some of our favorite people. You're definitely going to want to take a look at it, and it's just another way you can help support the channel by getting some awesome D&D content to drop into your game. Links in the description.
All right, so Dave, what is the all-mounted D&D party?
All right, so when we're talking about an all-mounted D&D party, we have to think about how that's going to work, both from the mechanics side as well as from the story aspects of the game, right? It's really tough mechanically sometimes to put together this cool idea where you're all maybe your knights on, these majestic steeds, or even you could be, playing different kinds of races and riding different exotic types of mounts. This has a challenge. It always has had a challenge. Usually the challenge is 1 or 2 people in the party have this going on, and everyone else is kind of like on foot, and that's their normal thing. Mounted combat can be a little tricky, and also offers different challenges, because what do we do a lot of times? When we adventure, we go into the dungeon, we go underground, we go places that aren't easy for our mount to get to.
So that makes it really difficult to go into this kind of stuff. So you really, if you're entertaining this kind of thought, you are going to have to make sure that number one, the party is all on board, but the DM kind of has to be as well. The one campaign that I ran, the party was very, very much known for having their mounts killed, because they would leave them somewhere and it was already determined that was a dangerous area, and they're like, we'll tie them up, we'll do the dungeon, and we'll come back. And sure enough, the mounts were run off, killed, or run off and then killed.
So what kind of story do you think we'd have to be telling, and our players would have to be involved for them all to be kind of mounted?
So I would think that they'd be wanting to have to cover great distances, and not magically, not just teleporting across the world, but having to just span the globe, so to speak. Or maybe haste is a situation. Haste is a factor, because they've got to do it quickly, and you get on a horse. The horse is going to be able to ride a lot faster, or run a lot faster than a person.
I think that's part of it, but I also feel like it requires a special type of character, special kind of person that has a bond with their mount, and that is going to want to have the mounts around all the time. And so when I kind of think about like a whole party, I think about like these almost have to be like knights or mounted cavalry that have banded together for some reason. And maybe they aren't even all riding the same types of mounts, and there's different ways to get to this mounted party, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. Right now, we're just kind of going over like the story elements that would bring these characters together, so the players could have this kind of game. And like you said, maybe there's a lot of travel involved, but I kind of think of it as maybe these individuals serve specific roles from different societies, or even the same society, where the mounts are super important, where it's not just the end to a means, but maybe it has a spiritual, religious, or cultural significance to the characters.
Yeah, that could absolutely be part of it. I imagine that there could be a region where each of these different cultures has their own specifics. If you want to use the term spirit animal, or just prized creature that they use for their cavalry, and perhaps you start the game a little bit higher, and these chosen champions are going to go deal with this massive threat, and because they all come from these cultures, they are gifted a prized mount to go ride out and do honor and glory for their nation, their civilization.
So now kind of getting into the mechanics of the game, we'll look at some things that are going to be factors. One of them is your background. And the reason why that's a factor, one of the important skills to someone that's going to spend a lot of time in the saddle and mounted, is animal handling, because that's a skill that you're going to use. In the player's handbook, there is only one background that's actually going to give you access to animal handling, and that's going to be folk hero.
Now there are several others that exist elsewhere. Folk hero, the alternate in Baldur's Gate version, is an option. But then from Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, there's the Gruul Anarch. And then from the Sword Coast Adventures Guide, there is the Faction Agent. All of those wind up giving you access to animal handling. But just those 4 options across all of the options, that's it.
But that being said, you might be able to pick it up from someplace else. With that, let's look at character classes and the ones that really do lend themselves to, having a mounted character.
So there is going to be the Artificer. They've got the Battlesmith, which if you wind up going with a small race, you could be able to ride your Iron Defender. You've got the Lore Bard, who they can do so much that it's not unheard of for the bard to be sitting astride a steed, plucking at a lute or mandolin.
Not only that, though, the Lure Bard is going to get the earliest access to magical secrets at 6th level. Then you could actually pick up the Find Steed spell and magically summon your steed. Fighter, you have the Cavalier. Now, of the character classes we bring up, this one doesn't actually get the mount or the steed, but they have a lot of abilities that work in conjunction with being mounted.
The Paladin actually gets the Find Steed spell that the Lore Bard would be, looking to steal from. And Paladins, could definitely go down the road of, riding a mount into battle. They've got abilities that work well with it.
And at higher levels, they also can access the Find Greater Steed and get an even better mount. Finally, we have Ranger, the Beastmaster. You can get a medium-sized creature. If you're small, you can ride it. So there's a couple options for if you want, to play a mounted character, a mounted combatant baked into the character class. Those are the ones you would probably go with.
So when we're looking at races, there's plenty of things that are going to be useful. But when we're looking specifically at this type of crunchy part, there's only 3 that are going to stand out. That's going to be the Centaur, the Lizard Folk, and the Orc.
So the Centaur, well, you are your own mount, and technically someone else in the party could probably ride you. I don't know how they feel about that or if they're going to appreciate it, but it is definitely a possibility. Both the Lizard Folk and the Orc get a small list of skills they can choose from, both of which have animal handling on it.
So when we're looking at feats, you're pretty much going to want to jump right to Mounted Combatant. It's going to be incredibly useful for this style game.
Mounted Combatant. You're a dangerous foe to face while mounted. While you are mounted and aren't incapacitated, you gain the following benefits. You have the advantage on melee attack rolls against any unmounted creature that is smaller than your mount. You can force an attack targeted at your mount to target you instead. If your mount is subjected to an effect that allows it to make a dexterity saving throw to take only half damage, and instead takes no damage if it succeeds the saving throw, and only half damage if it fails, which is super useful because oftentimes mounts don't have as many hit points as you do.
That is entirely true. So we know that we definitely want to kind of keep our mounts alive, and that is a feat that is certainly going to be able to do it. Shrugging off attacks or having them forced to go to you instead. Having the the mount be able to get less damage from spells, super helpful, because we know fireballs are kind of a common thing as you get into the higher levels. And speaking of spells, we have three spells that are going to fit into this mechanic. You've got Find Steed, Phantom Steed, and as Dave said earlier, Find Greater Steed.
Yeah, we mentioned a couple of those already. So Find Steed is great because once you summon your steed, you basically have it. Phantom Steed, not as much. It has a duration. But it is definitely a way to go, and this way your wizard can feel like they fit in with the rest of the mounted party. The only downside is it only lasts an hour, but it's a ritual spell, so you can keep casting it. But you might irk and annoy the rest of the party when every hour you want to take 10 minutes to stop and cast the spell.
Could you cast the spell while mounted? Can I just go through this ritual so that we can keep going? Every 50 minutes I start again.
Well, I guess technically you probably could.
You'd have to run that by your DM and see how they fare.
We also have a handful of magic items that help you out when we're talking about being a mounted character. There are 13 figurine of wondrous power, and like 12 of them you could probably use as mounts. Again, you're gonna have the same problem with the Phantom Steed spell because you only have them for limited duration, so you may not be able to be as mounted as the rest of the party using one of the other options.
There are other magic items that would be useful to this kind of party. You've got the Horseshoes of Zephyr, the Horseshoes of Speed, the Infernal Attack, and the Saddle of the Cavalier.
Yeah, so the Horseshoes of Zephyr are pretty cool because you put them on, a horse or a creature with hooves, and they basically don't touch the ground, so they can do things like run across water or lava, and they don't leave tracks, so that's nice. Horseshoes of Speed does exactly what it sounds like. It makes them faster, but significantly so. It adds 30 to the speed. The Infernal Attack is if you want to really upgrade your mount and enslave a nightmare, you can use that to do it. Only works if you're evil, though. And then Saddle of the Cavalier is going to stack really nicely with that mount in combat and make it even, make you even more efficient and effective from the saddle.
So I guess at this point in time, I would just kind of ask, what kind of difficulties would a all-mounted party face?
That is kind of like the crux of the matter with, building out this kind of party. Is it that they're going to face other mounted combatants, and that's why it really benefits them? So, if the major villains in your campaign are kind of like marauding horse lords or something of that nature, where if they weren't mounted, they would have trouble keeping up with them and catching them. Would definitely be a thing as far as facing enemies. But the other thing you mentioned is difficulties, and I immediately think of what happens if they have to climb, cliffs or go underground, enter dungeons. What about water? How is all these things going to affect them? These things that can normally be challenging for a party become even harder and extra challenging when you have a mount you have to consider as well.
So the other thing is to consider is, what happens if, you don't have a magically summoned mount and it dies, but yet the goal or the story calls for you to be mounted. We set up this whole preface of, hey, this entire mission is us riding and charging in fast against whatever this deadly and dangerous foe is. You lose your mount, does that put you out of the campaign? Does the DM have to shoehorn something in? There's definitely a lot of things that could be an issue. So you definitely have to take, all of those things into consideration if you're going to...
Side quest for a new mount?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, lots of cool things can happen because of that, and I've definitely been the DM to, allow the story to unfold, and it's like, all right, well, this sucks, but how do we deal with it? And you insert something, either a way to bring that creature back. If you're using a paladin's mount or a ranger animal companion or a magic item, these are things that are all just, kind of easy to deal with. You just use magic and you get the thing back. But,
Well, sort of. The ranger's beast companion is an actual creature. So, depending on your bond with that creature, you might want to try and revive it somehow or bring it back to life. Or you can just you can just get another one as raw, but it's not the same one.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I swear I read somewhere in the Ranger, thing that they can perform a ritual and bring that specific creature back. Because I know I've allowed a Ranger in my games to do that, and I don't know, maybe that was in the UA Ranger change.
It was in the Unearthed Arcana Ranger.
All right, well, I know it's out there, so that's what I've done for my game.
In the player's handbook, you are just constantly getting new beast companions. Eventually, it gets out that you're not a particularly great pet owner. PETA shows up. They start marching. It gets ugly really quick. But yeah, I mean, you could do that too, though. Like if you wanted to in your game and you wanted to, alleviate the difficulty with the Ranger, is have them perform a ritual and they can get back that same one. The Battlesmith with the Artificer, that's a construct, so they can, even if it gets destroyed, they could repair it, rebuild it, something along that nature. Or it could just end up being a quest to get back your mount. If that mount was particularly special to you, you might go on a quest to bring it back from the afterlife, or you're just going to have to find a new one.
Those are all possibilities as well.
If you like this video, you want another nightly video, you can check out the All Paladin Party.
Hey, did you know that we create new content every month for players and DMs alike over on Patreon?
Our patrons also get access to our monthly giveaways automatically. We do weekly patron-only live chats and more.
So until next time, stay nerdy.